The huge chamber buzzed with angry voices as 12 different alien species argued about what to do with humans. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the cold metal chair and watched the creatures that would decide his people's fate. Some looked like giant insects with shiny shells. Others had tentacles that moved like snakes. A few had scales that changed colors when they got mad. Ambassador Zexthery slammed his crystal hand on the speaking platform. His voice echoed through the massive room like thunder. The tall blue creature had 6 arms and eyes that glowed red. When he was upset, right now those eyes burned like fire. "These humans have been part of our galaxy for only 200 years, Zexthery said with hate in his voice. But look what they have done. They changed our trade routes without asking. They questioned treaties that are thousands of years old. Worst of all, they refused to stay in their place like every other species does." Council Prime Yomoth nodded. From her high seat above everyone else, the ancient being looked like a mix between a tree and a spider. Her bark-like skin was covered in strange symbols that glowed softly. She had ruled the galaxy for over 400 years and had never seen anything like humans before. "The humans are different from other species," she said in a voice that sounded like wind through leaves. "When the Korathi joined us, they accepted their role as miners. When the Vex came, they became our builders. But humans want to do everything. They want to explore, to lead, to change things. This cannot continue." Dr. Lisa Campbell sat next to Jake and wrote everything down on her small computer. She was Earth's best scientist who studied alien life. Her brown hair was tied back and her green eyes were sharp with anger. She had spent her whole life learning about other species, hoping to help them understand humans better. Now she watched all her work being thrown away. "They have no respect for order," said another council member. This one looked like a walking jellyfish made of purple gas. On Kepler Station, they rebuilt the entire air system without permission. They said it was more efficient, but that is not the point. "We have rules for a reason." A creature that looked like a metal robot with blue lights spoke next. "Human scientists publish their research for everyone to read. This breaks our knowledge sharing protocols. Information should only go through proper channels. They make our young scientists ask dangerous questions." Jake stood up slowly. He was tall and strong with dark hair and brown eyes. His blue uniform had Earth symbol on it, a picture of their home planet with its blue oceans and white clouds. He had served in space for 15 years and had seen how humans could work with aliens when both sides tried. "Council Prime, Jake," said in a clear voice, "humans have helped this galaxy more than you want to admit. We stopped the war between the Vex and the Zolar by finding a way for both sides to win. We created new medicines that saved millions of Korathi lives. We built faster ships that help everyone trade better." "Silence," Yomoth commanded. Her voice became cold and hard like ice. "Humans cannot follow simple rules. You think every problem needs a new solution. You think every old way can be improved. This chaos threatens the peace we have built over thousands of years." Dr. Campbell looked at her computer screen and frowned. Strange energy readings had been coming from the edge of the galaxy for months. The patterns were unlike anything she had ever seen before. She wanted to tell the council about this, but she knew they would not listen now. "The motion before us is clear," Yomoth announced. "Humanity will be removed from all council space. Every human colony beyond the Sol system must be empty within 1 standard year. Any human ship found in our territory after that time will be considered an act of war." The other council members voted quickly. 12 species raised their hands or tentacles or whatever they used to show agreement. Not one voted to help humans. Jake felt his heart sink but kept his face calm. "You are making a huge mistake. Humans and aliens can work together. We have proved this many times. Why throw it all away because we do things differently?" "Different is dangerous," said a lizard-like creature with golden scales. "Different leads to war. Different destroys peace. We learned this lesson long ago when the Destroyer Wars nearly ended all life in this galaxy. Only by following the same rules can we stay safe." Dr. Campbell raised her hand. Council Prime, may I speak? I have important information about energy readings from the outer rim. No, Yulmuth said without looking at her. This meeting is about human exile, nothing else. Your people have 1 year to leave our space. Use that time wisely. The giant gavel came down with a sound like breaking stone. The decision was final. Humans were banned from the galaxy they had called home for 2 centuries. Jake and Lisa walked out of the chamber in silence. Other humans in the hallway looked at them with scared faces. Everyone had heard the decision through the communication system. What do we do now? Asked Commander Tony Martinez, the pilot of their ship. He was young with black hair and worried eyes. We go home, Jake said quietly. We tell Earth what happened. Then we prepare for whatever comes next. Dr. Campbell looked at her computer one more time. The strange energy readings were getting stronger. Something was moving in the dark space between stars, something that did not belong to any known species. She had a bad feeling that the Council would need human help sooner than they thought. Jake, she whispered, I think they just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The captain nodded as they walked toward their ship. Behind them, the Council members celebrated their victory over human chaos. None of them noticed the warning lights flashing on the deep space monitoring systems. None of them saw the dark shadows moving between distant stars. The exile of humanity had begun, but something else was coming to the galaxy. Something that would make them wish they had kept their most adaptable allies close instead of pushing them away. 25 years had passed since the Council threw humans out of the galaxy. Admiral Ryan Cross stood on the bridge of his warship and watched the final pieces of Earth's new defense system lock into place. The huge metal rings surrounded the entire solar system like a giant fence made of energy and steel. Sir, the quantum field generators are working perfectly, said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her control station. Her fingers danced across the glowing buttons as numbers flowed across her screen. The barrier is complete. Nothing can get in or out without our permission? Ryan nodded with satisfaction. He was older now, with gray hair and lines around his blue eyes. The years since exile had been hard but productive. When the aliens kicked them out, humans had 2 choices, give up or get stronger. They chose to get stronger. Dr. Peter Hayes appeared on the main screen as a shimmering blue hologram. He was calling from his research lab on Mars where he worked day and night on new inventions. His hair had turned completely white from stress and long hours, but his mind was sharper than ever. Admiral, the new engine tests are finished, Peter said with excitement in his voice. Our ships can now travel distances that take alien vessels. Months to cover, we can do it in just days. Excellent work, Doctor, Ryan replied. How did we manage to advance so quickly? Peter smiled. Necessity is the mother of invention. When you have no choice but to innovate or die, you find ways to do impossible things. We took their rejection and turned it into motivation. The truth was that humans had spent 25 years learning to survive alone. Cut off from alien technology and trade, they had been forced to develop everything themselves. What started as a punishment had become their greatest advantage. Human engineers built machines that worked better than anything the Council had. Human scientists discovered new laws of physics that alien textbooks said were impossible. Meanwhile, far from Earth on the edge of what used to be Council space, Colony Administrator Greg Thompson was dealing with a very different kind of problem. He stood in his small office on New Haven Colony and stared out the window at something that should not exist. The attacks are getting worse every night, reported Chief Security Officer Nancy Wells as she entered his room. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly. 3 more settlements went completely dark. No communication, no life signs, nothing. Through the thick glass window, strange black shapes moved between the buildings of their small town. The creatures had appeared 6 months ago, and no one knew where they came from. They looked like living shadows that could change their shape at will. Worse, they seemed to feed on life itself, draining the energy from everything they touched. Have you been able to contact Earth? Greg asked while checking his plasma rifle for the 10th time that morning. He was a big man with brown hair and kind eyes, but the constant stress was wearing him down. Nancy shook her head sadly. The council is blocking all our communication signals. They do not want news of this spreading to other systems. But Greg, I've been listening to their emergency broadcasts. These shadow things are not just attacking our colonies. Council. Worlds are being hit too, and their weapons cannot stop them. The small human settlements that had refused to evacuate during the exile were now humanity's early warning system. They had chosen to stay and fight rather than run back to Earth. Now they were paying the price. But they were also learning valuable lessons about how to fight these new enemies. Look at this, Nancy said, showing Greg her scanner readings. These creatures absorb energy from everything around them. Plants die when they get close. Electronics stop working. Even the air gets cold. Greg studied the data with growing alarm. How are we still alive then? Why have not they absorbed us too? I think it is because we keep moving and changing our tactics, Nancy replied. Every time they adapt to our defenses, we try something completely different. It seems to confuse them. Back on Earth, Admiral Cross was reviewing reports from the outer colonies when his communication officer burst onto the bridge with urgent news. Admiral, we are picking up massive energy disturbances from Council space, announced communications. Officer Tony Martinez. He was the same pilot who had flown Dr. Campbell and Captain Morrison away from the Council chambers 25 years ago. Now he was older and wore the uniform of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Division. Show me, Ryan ordered, the main screen filled with swirling colors and strange patterns. Energy readings that made no sense according to known physics. Entire star systems seemed to be going dark, their light being sucked away by something invisible. What am I looking at? Ryan asked. We are not sure, sir, Tony replied. But whatever it is big, it is moving toward the core worlds, and it is consuming everything in its path. Dr. Hayes appeared on screen again, his face grave with worry. Admiral, I have been analyzing these readings along with reports from our outer colonies. I think we are dealing with something that exists partially outside our normal dimensions. It feeds on organized energy patterns. The more complex a civilization, the more attractive it becomes as a target. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Doctor, are you saying this thing is hunting advanced species? That is exactly what I am saying. And Admiral, based on its current path and speed, it will reach Council core worlds within 2 years. After that, it will come for Earth. The bridge fell silent as everyone processed this information. Humanity had spent 25 years building defenses against alien invasion. They had never considered that something might threaten both humans and aliens equally. Sir, said Lieutenant Foster quietly, should we try to warn the Council? Ryan looked at the tactical display showing the spreading darkness consuming world after world. The same aliens who had exiled humanity were now facing extinction from an enemy they could not understand or fight. Prepare a long-range message probe, he ordered. The Council threw us out, but we will not let billions of innocent beings die because of their pride. As his crew worked to prepare the warning message, Ryan thought about the irony of the situation. Humanity had been exiled for being too chaotic and unpredictable. Now those same qualities might be the galaxy's only hope against an enemy that fed on order and predictability. The exile had made humans stronger, but it had also isolated them from the galaxy they still cared about. Soon they would face a choice: stay safe behind their barriers or risk everything to help the people who had rejected them. Outside Earth's quantum barrier, the darkness between stars grew deeper and more hungry with each passing day. Council Prime Yulemoth stared at the huge tactical display in the center of her command chamber. Red dots marked dead worlds across nearly half of Council space. Each dot represented billions of lives consumed by the entity they now called the Devourer. Her ancient hands trembled as she counted 17 worlds lost in just the past month. The hegemony core worlds fell during the night cycle, reported Admiral Kexton, his proud voice now filled with barely controlled fear. The tall warrior stood rigid in his golden armor, but his eyes showed the terror that gripped them all. 3 billion hegemony citizens gone in less than 6 hours. Our most powerful weapons barely slowed the entity down. Dr. Veltar manipulated the holographic data with his 6 tentacle arms, each one shaking as he worked. The Council's chief science advisor had studied the galaxy's mysteries for 3 centuries, but nothing had prepared him for this. The entity appears to feed on organized energy patterns, he explained in his whistling voice. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the more attractive it appears as a target. It moves systematically toward the most developed worlds. Ililmuth felt the weight of her 400 years of leadership pressing down on her like a mountain. In all her time as Council Prime, she had never faced a threat that could not be reasoned with, contained, or destroyed through conventional warfare. Every enemy had rules, patterns, weaknesses that could be exploited. This thing had none. What about our ancient defense systems? She asked desperately. The stellar disruptors that can destroy entire solar systems? The reality anchors that lock space itself into fixed patterns? All completely useless, Veltar replied, his tentacles drooping with defeat. This entity exists partially outside our dimensional framework. Our most powerful weapons simply pass through it as if it were made of empty space. Worse, each attack seems to teach it more about our technology. The chamber fell into heavy silence as the council members absorbed this information. Species that had survived for millions of years were facing extinction from something they could not even properly understand. It was then that Ambassador X3 spoke up. The same blue-skinned alien who had led the campaign to exile humanity 25 years ago now looked broken and desperate. His crystal hands were cracked from stress and his glowing red eyes had dimmed to barely visible sparks. There is one option we have not considered, he said in a voice barely louder than a whisper. Every eye, tentacle, and sensor in the chamber turned toward him. The silence stretched so long that the only sound was the quiet humming of the emergency. Power systems. The humans, X3 continued, his pride visibly cracking like ice in the sun. Their chaotic nature, their refusal to follow established patterns, their constant need to break rules and try new approaches. What if those were not flaws to be corrected? What if that chaos is exactly what we need now? The suggestion hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several council members made sounds of shock and disgust. A few others nodded slowly as they began to understand what he meant. Our predictable responses, our structured thinking, our reliance on proven methods, X3 went on. All of it is useless against something that operates completely outside normal parameters. But humans never followed normal parameters to begin with. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, Admiral Cross was reviewing intelligence reports in his private office when Communications Officer Tony Martinez burst through the door without knocking. His face was flushed with excitement and disbelief. Admiral, we are receiving a priority transmission from deep in Council space, Tony announced breathlessly. Sir, it is from Council Prime Ililmuth herself. She is requesting immediate communication. With Earth's leadership? Ryan's eyes widened in surprise. After 25 years of complete silence, the Council was finally making contact. He had sent warning messages about the Devourer months ago, but received no replies. Now they were calling him. Put her through to the main command center, Ryan ordered as he straightened his uniform. And Tony, record everything? This conversation will change galactic history one way or another. Minutes later, Ililmuth's ancient face appeared on the massive screen in Earth's primary command center. Even across the vast distance of space, her desperation was obvious to everyone watching. Her bark-like skin looked gray and cracked, and her usually bright symbols flickered weakly. Admiral Cross, she began, her voice heavy with regret and fear, I am Council Prime Ililmuth. I know we have no right to ask for your help after what we did to your people 25 years ago. We exiled you, abandoned your outer colonies, and treated you as a threat to galactic peace. She paused, seeming to gather strength for what came next, but our galaxy now faces complete extinction from an entity we cannot understand or fight. We believe that humanity, with your unpredictable nature and innovative thinking, might be our only hope for survival. The command center was absolutely silent as every human present processed this incredible reversal. The species that had cast them out was now begging for their help. Council Prime, Ryan said carefully, you rejected humanity because we were too chaotic, too unwilling to follow established order. What has changed? Everything, Yulmuth replied simply. We face an enemy that feeds on order, that learns from predictable patterns, that grows stronger each time we use conventional tactics against it. Our structured approaches have failed completely. We need human chaos, human stubbornness, human refusal to accept that something cannot be done. Dr. Hayes appeared on a side screen from his Mars laboratory. Council Prime, we have been monitoring the situation from our deep space sensors. The entity you call the Devourer has consumed 43 worlds so far. Our analysis suggests it will reach the galactic core within 18 months. Is this correct? Your analysis is accurate, Dr. Hayes. Valtar's voice came through the transmission. Worse, we have detected smaller fragments moving ahead of the main entity. They appear to be scouting new targets. At current expansion rates, even Earth will be threatened within 2 years. The weight of this revelation settled over the command center like a heavy blanket. Humanity could not simply hide behind their quantum barriers and wait for the threat to pass. Eventually it would come for them too. What exactly are you asking of us? Ryan questioned. Partnership, Yulmuth answered immediately. Not as the junior members we once demanded you be, but as equals. Your ships integrated with ours, your tactics combined with our resources, your innovative thinking guided by our knowledge of galactic geography and alien psychology. Ryan looked around at his senior staff. Dr. Hayes was already pulling up technical specifications, clearly excited by the challenge. Lieutenant Foster was reviewing tactical data with intense focus. Communications. Officer Martinez was calculating travel times to Council space. Council Prime, Ryan said slowly, humanity will help you fight this threat. Not because we forgive what you did to us, but because innocent lives are at stake. However, this cooperation will be on our terms, using our methods under human command. Structure. Agreed, Yulmuth said without hesitation. Admiral Cross, we place ourselves under your command. Tell us what you need. As the transmission ended, Ryan realized that everything was about to change. The galaxy that had exiled humanity was now depending on them for survival. The chaos and unpredictability that had made them outcasts might now make them saviors. But first they had to figure out how to fight something that seemed impossible to kill. The war room aboard Admiral Cross's flagship had been quickly changed to handle the strangest meeting in galactic history. Human officers sat across from holographic projections of alien leaders who had once considered them enemies. The air was thick with tension as two very different ways of thinking tried to work together. Let me understand this correctly, said Commander Kate Sullivan, Admiral Cross's chief tactical officer. Her voice was sharp with barely controlled anger. You want us to help you fight something that has eaten 43 worlds using weapons and strategies you have never seen before after you exiled us and left our people to die on the Outer Rim colonies. Kate was known for speaking her mind, even when diplomacy might have been smarter. Her red hair matched her fiery temper, and her green eyes burned with the memory of friends lost during the exile years. Council Prime Yulmuth's holographic image flickered slightly as she nodded her ancient head. Commander Sullivan, I understand. Your anger completely. What we did to humanity was wrong, and we are paying the price for our prejudice now. But regardless of past grievances, we cannot allow billions of innocent beings to die. The situation is that you are desperate, Admiral. Cross interrupted, his voice calm but firm. However, despite what you did to us, we are not going to stand by and watch genocide happen. But this alliance comes with conditions that are not negotiable. Dr. Hayes looked up from his data analysis, his face pale with concern. Admiral, I have been studying the information they provided about the Devourer. This entity is not just consuming life force randomly. It appears to be learning from each world it absorbs, becoming more intelligent and adaptive with every victory. At its current rate of growth and learning, It will reach Earth within 2 years maximum. The doctor's words sent a chill through the room. Even if humanity wanted to remain isolated, they could not escape this threat forever. Then we have no choice but to act now, Cross decided. Dr. Hayes, how quickly can we adapt our new technologies for large-scale deployment? With Council manufacturing capabilities supporting us, we could have a combined fleet ready for combat in approximately 6 months. Hayes replied, his mind already racing through the technical challenges. But Admiral, our weapons work on completely different principles than theirs. We will need to train their crews on human equipment, integrate our command structures with their hierarchies, and somehow merge 2 entirely different military philosophies. Absolutely impossible, declared Admiral Kexton through the holographic link. The proud warrior's golden armor gleamed even through the projection. Council crews cannot be expected to operate under human command protocols. Our chain of command. Structures have evolved over thousands of years. The hierarchical protocols alone would take decades to modify. We'll get everyone killed, Commander Sullivan finished bluntly. Your rigid hierarchies and predictable battle tactics are exactly what this entity expects from you. It has probably already learned to counter every standard Council military response. If you want our help, you follow our rules and use our methods. The tension in the room became almost physical as alien pride clashed with human pragmatism. Several Council members began speaking at once, their various languages creating a cacophony of protest and argument. Enough, Admiral Cross said quietly, but his voice carried the authority that silenced the debate instantly. This is not a negotiation about military philosophy. This is about survival. The Devourer does not care about your traditions or our hurt feelings. It only cares about feeding and growing stronger. Far away on the outer rim, the human colonists who had refused evacuation were writing their own chapter in this crisis. Colony Administrator Greg Thompson stood in his reinforced command bunker, watching tactical displays that showed their desperate fight for survival. Nancy, what is the status on those Council evacuation ships? Greg asked as he reviewed defensive positions around their last major stronghold. The months of constant fighting had aged him visibly, turning his brown hair gray and adding deep lines around his eyes. Chief Security Officer. Nancy Wells looked up from her communication console with frustration. The Council finally sent transport. Vessels like they promised, but they are moving incredibly slowly. I think they are more interested in studying how we have managed to survive out here than actually rescuing us. Let them study all they want, Greg said with a grim smile that held no warmth. Maybe they will finally learn something useful about human adaptability. In the meantime, we keep fighting and learning. These colonies might end up being humanity's best laboratory for developing anti-devourer tactics. The Outer Rim settlements had become an unintended testing ground for new strategies. Cut off from both Earth and Council support, they had been forced to develop guerrilla tactics against the Devourer's advanced scouts. Their survival techniques were already being studied by human military analysts back on Earth. Greg, look at this, Nancy said, pointing to her scanner readings. The shadow creatures seem to have trouble adapting when we constantly change our approach. Every time they learn to counter one of our tactics, we switch to something completely different. It keeps them confused long enough for us to stay alive. Back in the Sol system, the first joint human Council vessels were beginning their test flights. The hybrid ships looked unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. They combined the sleek, elegant lines of Council design with the brutal functionality of human engineering. Captain Scott Barnes stood on the bridge of the UESGCS Harmony, the first truly integrated vessel in the new fleet. Half his crew was human, half was from various Council species, and the cultural tensions were obvious to everyone aboard. Human engineering makes absolutely no aesthetic sense, complained his Valonian science officer Zixthal as he struggled with what seemed like unnecessarily complex control systems. Why are there 3 backup systems for every primary function? It is wasteful and illogical. Aesthetic sense does not matter when you are getting shot at, replied Lieutenant Dan. Cooper, the human tactical officer. His voice was patient but firm. Those ugly redundancies you are complaining about mean this ship keeps fighting even when half the systems are damaged or destroyed. Council ships are beautiful, but they tend to explode when hit in the wrong place. That is because Council ships are not designed to be hit at all, Zixtel argued. Proper tactics prevent damage from occurring in the first place. And what happens when your proper tactics fail? Dan asked pointedly. What happens when the enemy does something you did not expect? The question hung in the air like a challenge. It was the same question that had led to humanity's exile 25 years ago, and now it might determine whether the galaxy survived or died. Enough arguing, Captain Barnes commanded. We have less than 3 weeks to become a functioning crew instead of a collection of individuals arguing about philosophy. The Devourer does not care about our cultural differences or technical preferences. Dr. Hayes appeared on the bridge communication screen with an update. Captain Barnes, our latest simulations show promising results. By combining human adaptive tactics with Council energy manipulation technology, we should be able to create weapons that can actually damage the Devourer. Should be able to? Questioned Zixtel. That does not sound very certain. Nothing about this situation is certain. Dr. Hayes replied honestly. We are fighting an enemy that operates by rules we do not understand, using weapons we just invented, with crews that have never worked together before. But uncertainty is something humans are comfortable with. We have built our entire civilization on taking calculated risks and adapting when things go wrong. As the Harmony continued its test flight, both human and alien crew members began to realize that their differences might actually be their greatest strength. Human unpredictability balanced by alien knowledge, innovative thinking supported by ancient wisdom, chaos guided by experience. The unlikely alliance was taking shape, but time was running out. The Devourer continued its advance toward the galactic core, and soon they would face the ultimate test of whether cooperation could triumph over an enemy that fed on order itself. The combined fleet hung in space near the dying world of Zarian Prime, humanity's most advanced vessels flying alongside the pride of the Council Navy. The planet below them had once been home to over 1 billion beings. Now its surface writhed with dark energy as the Devourer slowly consumed everything that had once lived there. Admiral Cross stood in the command center of his flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing both human and alien tactical data. The integration process had been difficult and sometimes painful, but 3 months of joint operations had created something unprecedented in galactic history, a truly unified command structure that combined human adaptability with alien expertise. All units report ready for combat, Admiral, announced Captain Barnes from the bridge of the Harmony. His voice carried the confidence of a crew that had finally learned to work as one team instead of 2 separate groups. The Chaos Protocol is loaded into all systems and standing by for your command. Dr. Hayes appeared on a side screen, his excitement barely contained despite the serious situation. Admiral, our final computer simulations look very promising. By deliberately introducing random variables into our attack patterns, we should be able to confuse the Devourer's adaptation algorithms long enough to cause significant damage. Confuse them with randomness? Questioned Council Admiral Kexton from his own flagship. The proud warrior still struggled with human tactical concepts that seemed to violate every principle of organized military strategy. Doctor, with all due respect, this plan violates every established principle of coordinated fleet combat. How can we achieve victory through chaos? That is exactly the point, replied Commander Sullivan with a fierce grin that showed her eagerness for battle. Every other enemy you have ever fought has followed some kind of logical pattern. They had strategies, weaknesses, predictable responses. This thing learns from patterns and uses that knowledge against you, so we give it no patterns to learn from. The Devourer seemed to sense their approach, its massive form shifting in the vacuum of space like liquid shadow given terrible life. Dark tendrils of pure energy reached out toward the fleet, probing for the familiar attack patterns it had learned to counter from dozens of previous battles with Council forces. All ships, prepare to execute Chaos Protocol on my command, Admiral Cross ordered over the fleet communication system. Remember, no predetermined formations, no predictable attack runs, no standard tactical responses. Trust your training, trust your instincts, and adapt to whatever happens next. The silence that followed was filled with tension as hundreds of ships prepared for a battle unlike any in galactic history. Human crews checked their weapon systems while alien officers struggled to accept the idea of abandoning millennia of military tradition. Execute Chaos Protocol now? The fleet scattered in directions that made no tactical sense according to any military textbook ever written. Ships dove, climbed, spun, and zigzagged through space in patterns that seemed completely random. They fired weapons that combined human quantum technology with council energy, manipulation in ways that should have been impossible according to known physics. The Devourer recoiled as if struck by physical blows. Its probing tendrils met resistance they had never encountered before. Every time it tried to predict where the next attack would come from, human ships would suddenly change direction or switch to completely different weapons on Zarian primes. Surface, the absorbed energy patterns that had once been living beings began to fluctuate wildly as the Devourer struggled to process the chaotic input it was receiving from the space battle above. "It is working," Dr. Hayes shouted over the communication system. "The entity's cohesion is breaking down. The random patterns are causing cascade failures in its absorption matrix. Look at those energy readings." But the Devourer was not passive. Prey. It was learning, adapting even to chaos itself. The dark tendrils began to take on new configurations, mirroring the unpredictable nature of the human tactics. What had once been ordered and systematic became wild and chaotic. "Admiral, the entity is adapting to our chaos protocol," warned Captain Barnes as his ship barely avoided a tendril that had somehow anticipated his seemingly random evasive maneuver. "It is starting to match our unpredictability with its own random responses." Admiral Cross watched the tactical display as the Devourer's behavior became increasingly erratic and chaotic. His tactical mind raced through possibilities as he realized what was happening. The entity was learning to be unpredictable, which meant it now expected unpredictability from its enemies. "All ships, immediate tactical change," Cross ordered. "Stop trying to be unpredictable. Execute the most logical, predictable, by-the-book attack pattern possible. Formation Alpha 7, Standard Council Approach, Textbook Targeting Solutions." "Sir?" questioned Commander Sullivan, confusion clear in her voice. "The Devourer adapted to chaos by becoming chaotic itself," Cross explained quickly as the battle raged around them. "Now it expects unpredictability from us. So we give it the one thing it cannot process fast enough: pure, boring, predictable military tactics that any first-year academy student could design." The fleet reformed into perfect textbook formations, their movements precise and orderly. They fired in coordinated patterns that had been used successfully for thousands of years across the galaxy. Every attack followed established protocols that were taught in military academies throughout Council space. The Devourer, now configured to counter chaos and randomness, found itself unable to adapt quickly enough to the sudden return to complete order and predictability. Its chaotic tendrils struck at empty space where they expected ships to dodge randomly, but instead found vessels moving in perfectly logical formations. The dark entity began to collapse in on itself, as its absorption matrix failed to handle the rapid shift from chaos to order. The writhing surface of Zarian Prime began to clear as the life force of billions of beings was finally released from the entity's grip. "Direct hit on the core structure," announced Lieutenant Foster from her sensor station. "The entity's energy patterns are destabilizing across all frequencies." What followed was the most spectacular destruction anyone in the fleet had ever witnessed. The Devourer imploded with a flash of light that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The dark tendrils that had spread across multiple worlds began to dissolve, releasing the absorbed energy of countless civilizations back into normal space. 3 hours later, Admiral Cross stood in a hastily constructed meeting hall on the now liberated surface of Zarian Prime. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to witness this historic moment. The chamber that had once voted to exile humanity now faced a very different reality. The threat has been completely neutralized across all affected systems, announced Dr. Hayes to the assembled delegates. Our combined human council fleet has successfully cleared the remaining Devourer fragments from all 17 affected worlds. Preliminary reports suggest that much of the absorbed life energy has been restored to a recoverable state. Council Prime Yulmuth approached Admiral Cross, her ancient posture showing a humility that had been completely absent 25 years earlier. The symbols on her bark-like skin glowed softly with what appeared to be genuine gratitude. Admiral Cross, the Council owes humanity a debt that can never be fully repaid, she said, her voice carrying the weight of genuine remorse. We exiled you for the very qualities that ultimately saved us all. Your chaos, your unpredictability, your absolute refusal to accept limitations. These were not flaws to be corrected, but strengths we were too proud and prejudiced to recognize. Admiral Cross nodded respectfully but kept his expression neutral. Council Prime, humanity has learned much during our years of exile. We learned to be completely self-sufficient, to innovate under extreme pressure, and most importantly, to value genuine cooperation over dominance hierarchies. If the Council is willing, we would like to propose a completely new kind of relationship between our peoples. State your terms, Yulmuth replied without any hesitation. After what you have done for us, humanity can name any conditions they wish. No terms, no predetermined hierarchy. No junior or senior partners, Cross said firmly. True partnership between equals. Human unpredictability balanced by council wisdom and experience. Our innovation combined with your accumulated knowledge. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to grow and explore together without anyone needing to dominate anyone else. As the council chamber erupted in excited discussions and complex negotiations, Commander Sullivan approached her admiral with the first genuine smile she had worn in months. So, Admiral, do you think they have finally learned their lesson about trying to get rid of us? She asked with obvious satisfaction. Cross looked out through the transparent walls of the meeting hall at the restored surface of Zarian Prime, where human and alien crews were already working side by side to rebuild what had been lost. In the distance, the combined fleet hung in orbit like a symbol of what cooperation could accomplish. I think, Commander, that the galaxy just learned something very important about humanity. We do not just survive being cast out, we come back stronger than before, and we bring everyone else up with us when we do. The age of human exile was officially over,